You're watching The Beer Garden, your landscape industry podcast that's best enjoyed with a beverage.
Hey folks, welcome to the Beer Garden. Excited to be here with you today. This is your landscape industry podcast that lasts as long as it takes to enjoy your favorite beverage. What's up, Brandon?
Not much, Jason. Just got home from Austin yesterday. Went down for South by Southwest. It was very nice. It was warm for a Canadian, but cold for a Texan is how I would describe the weather.
That's fair. You saw some live podcasts while you're down there, right?
I did. I saw a live recording of Tim Ferriss' podcast.
That's awesome.
And he was with Ev. He was a Twitter co-founder. Ev something. I should have looked that up before. And that was really good. And then we saw Dig Nation. Dig like D-I-G-G, not what that sounds like if I say it too fast. Sounds like I said it to a few people and they're like, Dick Nation. It was Dig Nation, D-I-double-G. And really good. That's like a podcast about a news website that's similar to Reddit. It was a competitor with Reddit back in the day, and it was like their reunion. The podcast broke up and then they got back together.
That's awesome. Nice. Yeah. Were you just there for the like kind of initial conference, or were you there for the music festival as well? I don't know the dates of, like, typically they do like the tech and that sort of stuff first and film, and then they do like the music the next week or something.
Yeah, that is, we missed the music part, I think. There was like stuff going on everywhere, as you know. There's just stuff going on at every bar and pub that you go to has a band playing and whatever, but the official music part of it was later, I think.
Okay. Nice. That's awesome. Well, glad to have you back and glad that you had fun.
Yeah. Thanks, man. What's going on with you?
Not too much new. I don't have anything as exciting. Well, that's not true. I guess since the last time we met, I took a trip to Palm Springs, which was pretty sweet. Fairly low key, just kind of hung out by the pool, drove around, saw some cool, I've been kind of nerding out on mid-century modern architecture. So kind of like did a little self-guided tour to see some of the architecture down there and stuff. It was pretty rad. Good time.
Excellent. What are you drinking today?
Oh man,
you got for me?
I'm pretty excited about this. It looks like a wine. In fact, the lady, when I was buying it, thought that it was a wine and was very confused. But this is a great beer. It is called the Nightmare on Brett. And
say that again.
Nightmare on Brett.
You say it's like nightmare is what you say.
What do you say?
Nightmare. Like how it's spelled, like sounded out.
Yeah, I can't say words correctly. Nightmare.
And you say milk. Give me some milk.
Milk.
All right.
Nightmare on Brett. This is so this is from a really cool brewery here in Denver called Crooked Stave, right down the street from my house. And this is a dark sour ale aged in Leopold Brothers whiskey barrels. So wow. It's so special. I'm going to have to pour it into a glass here because also I'm not going to be able to drink this entire thing. Oh, and I've got my Casa Bonita bottle opener.
Oh, dude. I saw a Casa Bonita and I've got a sticker here that I got.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Jason has a Casa Bonita tattoo.
I do have
actually.
Wait, you just gave me shit about the way I say nightmare. Go ahead and say Casa Bonita again one more time.
Casa Bonita.
No.
I say Casa.
You said Casa.
I do say
Casa Bonita tattoo. I do, though. That's right there.
Hell yeah. That's a South Park owned restaurant in Denver. That's
Now
how
it
I
is.
describe it.
Yeah, it's a Denver staple and has been for many decades, but recently was bought by the South Park creators and saved because it was going to be shut down, or it was shut down during COVID and was going to just disappear. And they bought it and restored it, brought it back.
It's a must see. Like you would fly to Denver just to go to Casa Bonita, I would say.
You did.
They have.
I'm pretty
I did.
sure that that's
Yeah.
the reason you came down.
Well, it was exclusive when it first opened. There was a long wait list, and Jason got the golden ticket. But there's people like diving in there and like off of fake cliffs into ponds and stuff. And there's like a marionette with a thing, and there's like cave tables.
It's a
And
man in a gorilla suit running around. Did you see the gorilla at all?
I don't think so.
Oh.
But there was a lot to see. I could have forgot. It's overwhelming how much stuff there is. Very hard to describe it. So
yeah,
make sure you go to the Bonita when you're there.
Definitely worth checking out. What are you drinking?
I have to go to the liquor store, I'll be honest, but I have my koozie from Dignation, Austin, 2025%. And yet again, I've got a crispy tall boy. This has got to be the last of the 6-pack that I bought.
I was going to say this has to be like episode 5 or 6, so I'm sure you're almost out.
No, I didn't feel like another Guinness and Strongbow this time. Yeah, so it's from Jasper. Jasper is a beautiful part of Alberta, and it's kind of like Banff, mountainy. Has a not an iceberg, a glacier. The big ice things has a big ice thing, glacier, and beautiful place. They make great beer. This is a Pilsner.
Awesome. Well, cheers. Yeah. Cheers me.
Okay. Cheers. Nice glass.
That is really
with
good.
Your wine beer.
I don't remember. Do you like sours?
No.
Oh, you would hate
that. I like porters, stouts, and pilsners.
Okay. Lagers. You like a good lager.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. I don't know that much about beer to be the co-host of a beer podcast.
You like that tangerine cream ale? That Station
Don't tell
20...
people that. Yes, I do. Yes. Yes, I do.
All right. Well, should we actually talk about landscaping?
Yeah. Very exciting. So this is going to come across like a really boring topic, especially if you're not don't already know about it and you're not already interested in it. But I promise that it's highly impactful. And it will change the game for you on estimating and a lot of other things. And it's called production rates. We're talking about production rates today. So it will help you price things consistently. If you're ever wondering or struggling with handing off estimating, if you're the owner or some kind of manager that has to hand this off to other people to start estimating, and you've been doing it by just guesstimating, then production rates are the way to do that. It'll help you ensure profitability on contracts. It would give you more confidence on bigger contracts. You know, if you've ever broken into and gotten an opportunity for a job that's way bigger than you're used to, and you're scared to screw up the estimate one way or the other, it'll help you. Or like long term, you know, a 3-year contract. Production rates are how you do it. And so what it is, like a production rate is simply how many square feet per hour for each service can your crews produce. It's usually measured in square feet, but it could be, you know, how many pavers can you lay in an hour, that kind of idea. So it's just a rate of production.
Brilliant. Back in the it's like very simply the average time it takes to complete a task, right? Like that's the key.
Yes. So we'll talk about it kind of at an equipment level, like how fast can you run a line trimmer, or on average, how quickly do you run a line trimmer, not how fast can you. I'm the fastest, and stuff like that. And or like service based, what's your production rate? All equipment combined to do like a cut and clean service, spring cleanup, these types of things. that's what we're going to talk about today. Want to get us into the first segment there, Jason?
Yes. So we've kind of dabbled in it already, but let's just dive into like what production rates are, and specifically like kind of why they're important, how you might use them, and what the kind of alternative estimating styles, what the alternatives are if you're not using production rates to estimate.
Sorry, I laughed like such a jabroni right there.
It was good. I liked it.
It was just
So as Brandon mentioned, it's really the average time it takes to complete a specific task, but how you use that is typically in your estimating process. So if you know the average time it takes to, we'll use Brandon's example, complete a cut and clean service, then in theory, all you need to do is grab the measurement of the service area. In this case, it would be lawn areas for a cut and clean service, and then multiply, or divide. Multiply or divide your production rate by the square footage of that property, and then you could very simply, once you have that, you can multiply that by your charge rate to know what you should charge for that particular service. That was way harder to explain than it should have been.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Jason is successfully explaining there is that you'll have to come up with a production rate. Let's start there. So to come up with a production rate to measure off of, you need to have the measurement. So the let's say square feet of all of the lawn on your property, and you need to have the time it takes. So if you have 100,000 square feet of lawn, and it took you 6 total hours to complete that cut and clean, your production rate would be 16,666. So that's how you would come up with one. So to measure it, there's multiple tools that you can use to measure lawns. Maybe we won't get into promoting too many other softwares unless they start sponsoring us here, but there's a multitude of options. Some of them actually I'll support Deep Lawn for residential, just because we met him and he was cool at a conference. But really good for residential, and it would give you a square footage of lawn. You can just use Google Maps, right click on Google Maps, and it says start measuring or something. You just click some points. You can use a measuring wheel, old school, but you need to get the total square feet of the lawn in this case, and then you need to time it. So if you need to either use a stopwatch, you need to have time tracking software, you need some way to know how long it took. And then, of course, the more and more data you feed into the machine, the more refined that number gets. So you only do it on one property, it's not a big data set. If you do it on all of your properties of that similar type, then you're going to really dial it in and know. And then when you go to estimate your next property, you can say, okay, well, all I need to know is the measurement of the lawn. I'll multiply that by my rate, and that's how many hours it should take, right? Now, everybody that I've ever talked to about this, when I get to this point of the conversation, they're thinking, well, some properties have a fence, or some properties have a big hill, or some properties have a lot of obstacles, or that lawn is on top of an apartment building. Yeah, that's true. There is a lot of complications that you can add to it. And what you're looking for is an average on that type of property. So, if you do residential, you have a lot of residential houses that are kind of in the same range that use similar equipment. And, most of them have a gated backyard, so on and so forth. So that's one type. Then you might do commercial. You're going to have another rate for commercial because you got big open fields, and then maybe you have little downtown apartment buildings and you give another rate for those. My suggestion is to not overcomplicate things. Get a couple of rates for each service, and then you can still use like a human element to it. So you can say, okay, it says it's 5 hours, but that one does have that super steep hill, or it's right beside a Tim Hortons, so there's garbage all over the lawn every time. I'm going to add 20 minutes.
And the guys are going to stop and go get some Timbit, so got to add some.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's variables that you'll pull your hair out trying to account for here, but it will get you close and consistent. That's the key.
And this is like a lot of other things we talk about where like something is better than nothing. So even if you, as Brandon said, I do think that it's important to split it out by property type generally. Like you will find that your residential, like single family home production rate is likely going to be, the average is going to be quite different from your homeowners association. But like beyond that, like if that's all you did, if you didn't take into account all these other factors and you just had an average for all the single family homes you do, it's a great starting point. You will want to refine that later, and you'll want to like dive in and figure out like how you tweak it and when you tweak it and what things impact it, but just start somewhere. Like it just, again, this is an average. It's meant to get you in the ballpark. And it's a lot better than the alternatives, because think about like the alternatives of how things are being priced generally. Like usually, like probably the most common early on is just simply eyeballing it and giving an estimate, right?
Like what do my competitors charge? Like what's the market price for the service?
Right, exactly. And that's, especially the like competitor thing. Like you have no idea what equipment they're using, like how skilled their staff is. Like there's just so many different variables that go into that like make you different than your competitor, that's not a super reliable way to do it. And generally, even if you're really good at it, like eyeballing and spitting out an estimated amount of hours and multiplying that by your charge rate, usually not that consistent as well. And as Brandon touched on at the top of this, like there's important reasons for this. Like this impacts your overall profitability. If you underbid the crap out of a job and you're stuck with that, especially if it's a recurring contract, you're stuck with that contract all year, you're losing money every time you visit that site if the guys can't produce as fast as you estimated that they would produce. And then the alternative is like you way overprice it and you're not winning any bids. You're not even competitive or in the realm of possibility. So, and even if you're pricing it in a different model, like flat rate or tiered pricing, where it's like X amount of dollars up to 5,000 square feet, X amount of dollars up to, or 5,000 to 10,000 square feet, whatever that may be. Like some people do price that way. You still need a production rate to figure out what those prices are going to be, or else
the
you're
hours.
just,
Like
exactly.
you know, like if you do, how many lawns do you do for residential in a day?
25 to 30 typically.
Okay, so if you're doing 25 to 30 lawns in a day, you need to know like the difference between a property that's going to take you 6 minutes and 8 minutes, ideally, because you like one more lawn a day makes a big difference, over the season.
Absolutely.
So production rates will help you not only estimate prices, but estimate hours and then build schedules off of those hours.
Right. Yeah.
That's exactly when I started, it was like, I don't know, $300 a month. And, you're trying to just fit in a route. And you're like, I think I can do that day. And that's okay when you're smaller, but it doesn't work as you get past $1 million in revenue, like, or I would say even 600 or 700 grand in revenue, it really starts to screw you. And then one day you have to hand this off to someone. So the earlier you start, if you're planning to grow your business, the earlier you start to figure out your production rates and refine them and all of that, the better.
Yeah. I think it goes beyond just pricing though. Like, can you tell me some of the other like benefits of doing this, or like reasons you might do it, some other things that you might get out of tracking your production rates?
Yeah. So remembering that it's hours and pricing that you get out of it, it just helps you answer a lot of questions and makes the conversations data based instead of like it feels like, or which is how my life was for a decade before I adopted this stuff. Like growing up, I hated school. I hated this is like all math and all equations. I was like, it took like I didn't start a business to do all the stuff my teachers told me I would need in life. They were right. So one of them, one question it it could help you with is, say you're coming up on renewal and you want to know if you need to increase the pricing, and then you're like, I feel like I need to increase the pricing. What is the reason you have to increase the pricing? Is it that you estimated it poorly last spring, or is that crew just slow, right? And that you might have a feeling, and you're gonna go talk to the crew and tell them that they're slow. But wouldn't it be nice to have data to back that up, right? So if I was to approach that question, I would say, well, what's the square footage of the site? Now, what's the actual hours for that crew on that site this season? And I could just divide the square footage by the hours, not multiply, Jason, divide, and it would tell me their production rate. So now I'd say, okay, well, their production rate was 6,000 square feet an hour. Let me check them on some other sites. Okay, they're always like 5,500 to 6,500 square feet an hour on average, but I estimate at 9,000 square feet. I'm just making these up, by the way. Don't copy these rates. I estimate at 9,000 square feet an hour. And when I look at that other crew is always doing like 9,250, 9,500. Again, just by taking total square feet, dividing it by actual hours. It's not an estimate anymore. I have actuals. So now I know that it is the crew, right? And if that information was different, I could have said, well, when I estimated it, look at the square feet I used. I didn't include that big field, or I missed that it is, this inaccessible part of the property that got added in the middle of the season, or, it helps you figure out what happened. Another one would just be, your actual production rates on each of your sites. So just looking at them all, using that as a feedback loop to improve your production rate. So if it is 8,500, from the last 3 years, is it still 8,500, or did you somehow get faster? What did you change? Let me think of another one here. I have a couple listed.
While you're thinking about that, I'll throw something out just to kind of
Sure.
add on to what you were talking about with like the crew example. As your business scales, you will notice likely, or have noticed, that like there becomes a pretty, like, I think of it as a very healthy tension between sales and production. Like production always wants to come back and say like this was underbid or overbid, like this is wrong, like sales screwed this up if they're not meeting their metrics, right? And
Yep.
sales likes to oftentimes say the opposite. And that can be actually a very healthy tension, because you have two different departments that are kind of like pushing each other to be better at their job. Where it becomes unhealthy is if you don't have data to base any of this off of, and then you just have people going at each other's throats. And so when you can actually dive into the numbers and say, well, let's actually look at this, let's determine what happened here. Okay, cool. Like they bid this job at, call it 8,000 square feet per man hour. And when we look historically, you guys typically actually cut at 9,000, 10,000 square feet per man hour. So actually, it looks like they bid the job with plenty of padding for your crew. Let's determine now, let's dive in further. Like, is it something about this site? Is it something that we need to like dive in further about? Like, it just helps the conversation move along in a productive manner rather than like a gut feeling sort of thing and just an argument. So we found
Yeah.
that
Let's
really
dive
helpful.
in and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
It can often be embarrassing for the
Yeah.
for the crew, because they're like accusing the estimator or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a sweet feeling, because I was always the estimator, but I was wrong a lot too, which I also proved. So anyway, another good one is like, how often are you told like, oh, we need the bigger piece of equipment, or we need like 2, 3, whatever mowers on this job, or we want, we need standers instead of zero turns, or vice versa.
Or I need
always
an extra person on my crew.
I need a fourth person or a third
Yeah.
person or whatever, right? It's like, okay, how do we figure that out with data? It's production rates, right? So you say, okay, well, you need a fourth person on the crew. Let's test it out. You do that site every Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we'll put a fourth person on the crew. And obviously, like, I would do it without telling them it's a test, so they don't like just sprint the whole time or something. But help them, like have them run through a week with a fourth person or whatever it may be and test the theory. And then just, again, you have actual hours tracked now. Take the square footage, divide it by the actual hours. Did the production rate go up or not, right? With an extra person in the truck, you have utilization, like you're paying for all the downtime, drive time in between and stuff. That screws things up as a side note. But same with equipment. Like, did that extra piece of equipment on that crew actually help or not? Did a larger mower, they've been running 48s and now they want a 60. So I gave them the 60 this week. Did their times actually speed up, or were they unable to get to some places because it wouldn't fit through gates and, in some areas? Well, same thing. You can test it out. So when you have a large business and you have 20 crews rolling out, you can really test things in this way before you make a huge investment. Imagine buying a 60-inch zero turn for all of your crews on a hunch that you think it will speed them up over the 48s. Well, it might not be the case. I would actually probably tell you it won't be the case. And you can test it by, like, let's buy one, or I don't know if you can rent one in your market, put it on a crew, test it out. How big of a difference did it make? And is it worth doing, right? So yeah, those are some of the questions that you can ask and some of the value of this.
Awesome. Cool. So now I think we see the value, we see like how these can be used. How did you determine your production rates? Like, what are some important lessons you learned as you were determining them? Because I can think of a few on my end.
So how I determined them was, luckily I was doing time tracking for quite a while. So I had the data. I just didn't put it together. And it's like, if you're fortunate enough to have an admin person that can help you run this data and put it on, like we talk about period boards, like basically like an annual recurring checklist. So every few months, let's pull all the actual production rates and update our baseline estimated ones, right? So we pulled all of our time tracking data. We got square footage. We got measurements like takeoffs for all of our sites. And then we figured out all of the production rates for each service, for each site. And then we saw all the outliers, and we would figure out, like, why is that one so high and that one so low? And it's usually a time tracking error or whatever it may be. You go through this process of just saying, okay, well, all of these sites are similar. These are all this size of property. That's group A. Okay. Now all the cut and clean production rates from the lawn and actual hours tell us that it's, 8,000 to 10,000 square feet an hour is the range. The average is right at about 9,000. Let's go ahead and pick 8,800 to be nice to the guys this season, and then we'll dial it in over time, right? So that's how we got ours. The thing that I really screwed up when I first started learning about production rates, it was from a takeoff software. I don't know if they're still around or not, but I started by using this takeoff software that you'd have a satellite view, you'd click a bunch of times, you'd measure every little piece of grass or bed or whatever you're measuring, and it would tally it all up. And it suggested that I do it by equipment rather than by service. So you can have a production rate for every piece of equipment on your lawn crew. I know we're only talking about cuts, but you'd have production rates for spring cleanups, fall cleanups, for squirt, everything. What I was saying is, you could measure a property. You could say, well, here I'm going to use the 21 inch. Over here I'm going to use a 36. Over here I'm going to use a 60. I'm going to line trim here. Oh, that's a hard edge, and this is a soft edge. And you could have a rate for every single one of those things, like how many linear feet you can trim in an hour and all of that. And I tried to do it that way. Measuring was a pain, but that was the easy part. The real realization came when I told my guys to track time in that way, because I never had a feedback loop anymore. You always want actuals in the end. Well, I have time tracking for cut and clean and for spring cleanup and for fertilizer application. I don't have time tracking because there's not like a referee with a stopwatch and a check, a clipboard in the field.
Yep.
That's watching everybody going like, okay, like he's put the trimmer down and picked up a backpack blower. Now like clock him out of that, clock him into this. Oh, he's on a 21 inch. Oh, it ran out of gas and he switched to the 48, It's like nobody's doing. So your data is so messy. You have no actuals. So that's a very long-winded way of saying do it by, I recommend, at least when you're starting out, do it by service, cut and clean, spring cleanup, not by equipment like 48 and 21.
I totally agree with that. And it goes back to the thing we said at the top is like, this is meant to be an average. Yes, I know like on this site, you might use the 48 and on this site, you might use the 32. And therefore like the production rate's going to be slightly different from site to site, but it's meant to be an average. And the headaches that you will save by doing it in more of like the global service type rather than each individual thing, it like speaking from experience, it's so much easier and more efficient and like realistic to track it on that service level. And I think that generally when people see production rates, I think they kind of get scared away from it because generally when you see production rates, you see it by like equipment type. And the reason for that a lot of the time is because it oftentimes people don't know or don't want to do the work to figure out production rates. But one thing that does have production rates are equipment manuals. Like there's
Oh
you
yeah,
can
good point.
you can look up like the different mowers and they'll say like on average cuts this amount. But first
Like
of all, that's a
acres
terrible
per day or hour or whatever.
yeah, but that's a terrible thing to use also because that's like if you were just like in an open field mowing all day going back and forth, like that's the production rate that you would have. You don't ever have that situation. You're loading in and out, you're going in and out of gates, you're going around trees, you're doing like all this sort of different thing. So like definitely start with the service. And then to your point, like you don't have someone sitting there watching when the guys change. And I was arrogant enough to think like, well, no, we don't have someone there. But like I'm just gonna force my guys, and my guys are really good. So I'm just gonna force them to like clock in and out every time they change tasks. Like it's never gonna happen. And it became very apparent when I went out in the field with them and I was constantly forgetting. Like God, I just like switched from this to this, and I didn't clock out of that, and like it just is not realistic. And you're decreasing your production rate by asking them to switch every time that they switch
Yeah.
their clock, every time that they change the tasks that they're doing. So yeah, definitely I would recommend doing it by
I
service.
believe one day it will happen autonomously and
Yes.
we'll have like the sickest data
Yeah.
ever, which will be like a dream scenario, right? Like you can already fairly easily measure by, this is going to be a 21, this is a 48 lawn area. It's the time tracking that's a pain. And I think someday when all of our equipment becomes more connected and things like that, like there's, I don't know, like Makita and tools and stuff have like some kind of tracking thing on them. Eventually everything will just be tracked that way or autonomous in general. And we'll have this data feeding back like mowers with GPS on them. If your mower is 48 inches and it has GPS, you have equipment-based production rates.
Right.
We don't have that today. So
Right.
it'll get there though, I think.
For sure.
One like caveat I would say is like for equipment based is like if you have humongous properties where say you look after like a university campus and your crews are just not switching equipment very often, like you're setting on a 16-foot groundsmaster, like, wide area mower or something all day long for an 8-hour shift, then yeah, you can have equipment based time tracking pretty easily. It's just, really starting with that end in mind. Like, how's the time tracking going to work? That's how my measurements should work.
Right. Yeah. Great. Cool. So let's talk about some different strategies in regards to what you you set me up perfectly for that, but like different average job size, which oftentimes means different like site type, right? So, for a small AJS, small average job size, like single family residential homes, it might not warrant, like Brandon mentioned, we've just been talking about cut and clean, but it might not warrant measuring, like getting a measurement of all the lawn areas and all the bed areas and a tree count and all this sort of stuff for a job that's only going to be worth, I don't know, a couple $1,000. Just simply because getting that data at the front end can be expensive if you're using one of those softwares to generate it. And even if you're paying someone on your team to go around and click through and measure all those different things, it can be expensive. And so you might want to consider that in your average job size. An example of that is like we serve both single family homes and homeowners associations. For the homeowners associations, we submit every measurement through a piece of technology that we use that measures like everything on the site, like I just mentioned, like all this different areas. For residential, we just have our customer service reps. When the request comes in, while they're on the phone with the customer, they pull up Google, like Brandon was mentioned earlier. They click measure site and they just click around the turf only. So only the lawn. They just measure the lawn. And that's the only measurement we take for residential. And we spit that into our calculator, and then it goes up against our production rates for everything. So it's just something to consider if you have a smaller average job size that might matter. And then another point I wanted to just make is for us, we have two different production rates for the same services. And Brendan mentioned this at the top, but like we have one production rate for cut and clean on single family residential, and then we have a different production rate for cut and clean on homeowners association properties. And it makes sense when you think about what these production rates are actually telling you, right? Like they're telling you on average how quickly you can do the service. Well, yes, you can knock out a property quicker, a single family property quicker, but your actual cut rate, like square foot per hour, is less on a residential because it's typically tighter. You're working around a lot of different obstacles. And again, because we're measuring entire service, like you've got the load and unload time, which actually, like as a ratio, takes up more of that time on site. And then you're going in and out of gates. Like there's just other stuff. Whereas at a big homeowners association, the guys pull up, they unload, and then they're standing on the mower for like a very long time, just cutting lines, cutting stripes. Like they're wide open a lot of the time. They don't have as many like gates to go in or things of that nature. So just something to note.
Cool. You can also you can make this more complex over time. I wouldn't start this way. I would just have, like Jason said, maybe you have a cut and clean rate for residential, and then one for large properties. Over time, you can add like a difficulty multiplier or difficulty factors if you want to, and you can define them. So you could say 8,000 square feet an hour is our average, like our standard site. And then you can, in a sentence or two, define what a standard site is. Like it's a condo site, some of the yards have like fences, but they're not gated individually. Maybe that's a standard site, like not many hills, couple of open areas. And then you could have another one that's like difficult, and difficult could be defined as, it's like every house has a gate that you have to go into, very steep hills that we can't run mowers on or something. And might get a lot of garbage or something from nearby strip malls. Or call them strip malls in America?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that. Okay. You have those two. All right. And then, easy might just be like, this place is wide open. They have like, a soccer field size park that we cut, and it's really fast. And then you could have 8,000 as standard, slow is like 6,000 and fast is like 9,000. And that can kind of help people dial that in. I wouldn't get there until you have a lot of data collected. You have a bunch of site samples like that. So you can say, well, those 5 or 10 condo sites we look after are all fenced like that. Let me check their actual production rates. And oh yeah, it is like 7,000 or 6,000. So we'll use that. Right. So you can get that detailed with it. I just, I don't want people, I'd rather people do it than get overwhelmed and, thinking Totally. They need to.
Yeah. We use difficulty factors, and for some services, it's like way more useful than other services. Like for cut and clean, yeah, our difficulty factors, like they help for sure with all the things you were talking about, hills, access issues, those sorts of things. Where I use difficulty factors the most, I find when I'm kind of preparing my estimates, is like gardening actually for us, because we bid all our gardening based off of bed square footage, but that bed could be rocks, it could be mulch, and it could be way different in the density of plants that are in there. And so, like, for example, for us, if it's a rock bed, it's going to be way quicker. If it's a mulch bed, generally you're going to have more weeds, you're going to have more to tend to, you're sweeping the mulch back in. And then plant density is like a big one, right? Like if there's hardly any plants in the beds, you know, if there's not a lot of weeds and things like that, it's going to be a fairly quick visit. So we use it a lot in there. And then plowing is another one. Like plowing, an easy one is just a wide open lot. A moderate one might have some islands that you got to go around. A difficult one might be a really tight apartment complex where you're working around vehicles that are parked in there and you're kind of snaking through, and the pile locations are really spread out. So you got to like drag snow quite a bit and push snow to different areas of the property. Like that's when it becomes useful. But I totally agree. You can start without difficulty factors and even just use human judgment on occasion and like tweak it up here and there.
Yeah. Small job size residential, speed really becomes a factor on your estimating. So
Totally.
you just can't, like, unless you can find a way with technology to do it. It can't touch like 3 people before you get to an estimate, and you can't go out and measure like with a wheel and figure out all these rates and do all this stuff. But if the contract's of like 50 grand, 100 grand, now you can spend more time, right? So
Yeah.
that's one way to think about your estimating system, and how complex it can be. One thing I wanted to add, like, it sounds like you actually have production rates for gardening, which is awesome.
Well, we do for our commercial properties, homeowners associations, things of that nature. We don't use production rates at all for our residential for gardening.
What about hedge trimming?
Not on the residential side. So
You do on commercial and condos?
Yep. Yeah, we call it seasonal pruning, but yeah.
That does sound good. That's a high value term. It sounds expensive. Hedge trimming. It just sounds like I'm going to come in with a scythe, some rusty old scissors. Nice. I like that. I just learned something. So you don't let having production rates for every service hold you back from using them at all. So start with something, cut and clean probably. Gardening is really hard in my mind, and hedge trimming is really hard. Hedge trimming has another dimension. It's like how high, how tall is the thing? Totally. And then there's many different climates. Like I lived on Vancouver Island for a while. It's like trimming hedges is people have like ladders. There's hedges that are as tall as the house, and
right.
That's not a thing really in Calgary. So we think about it differently. But the way that I do it, I don't have production rates for gardening or hedge trimming. Everything else I do. I estimate based on half-day increments. So I've handed estimating off to our account managers to handle, and I needed to give them something, because what I used to do was I just look at the site and I'd say, well, there's a lot of beds. I think that's going to be like 7 hours, and it had no rhyme or reason for it. And I'm in Canada, so you get bids to do in winter. Everything's covered in snow. This
right.
place could be full of weeds. I don't know, if I can't tell. Satellite photos are 2 years ago. There was no mulch then. Did they put rock since? You just don't know. So I just do it by, okay, 2-person crew, how many half-day increments? And if you do smaller sites, use like quarter-day increments or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. So I know it's a bit of a cheat, but
No,
That's
it's exactly what we do for residential. I mentioned earlier that our CSRs only measure the lawn, because the bulk of our services happen in the lawn, right? Like that's the input we need for aeration, fertilization, cut and clean, like all those different things. And then our package just has bolt-ons for what we call detail maintenance, you call gardening. And so the customer can bolt on
Your
two man
terms
hour.
are so much sexier than mine. Gardening, like detail maintenance. Sounds like that sounds 20% more expensive than what I do. Same thing.
uh, yeah, but we just do bolt-ons, so it's just 2 man hour. In our case, for residential, 2 man hour bolt-ons for detail maintenance. And it's the exact same as what you're talking about, and I think that's a fine way of doing it. Another one that can be really difficult to get production rates on. We technically have production rates on them, but I don't think they're the best. They, I think like it gets us there, but they're not the best. It's irrigation. And the reason for that is like if I really wanted to have a production rate for irrigation that was fairly accurate, I would do it by zone. So I would know how many zones are there. But the problem is getting the count of zones when you're providing an estimate is not always possible. In fact, a lot of times it's not. Because again, you're bidding in the winter. No one has access to the timers. Now you're trying to track someone down to get access to the timers so you can figure out how many zones are on all of them. Like it just
Somebody
becomes
else already got the job by the time
yeah,
you've done that.
exactly. So we just do it by, in that case, what we call like total landscape area square footage. So beds, anything that's going to be irrigated, right? Beds, turf, etc. And we have a rough production rate for that. And that's one that we watch really closely once we get the contract to then see like, were we pretty close? Do we need to tweak that? Like, how do we?
And once you're the size of a company like yours, the like room for error, how do I say this? It's like when you screw up one estimate, it comes out in the wash. Like it's much better to be fast. Like you make so much money being fast and getting bids back to people quickly. And then realizing like, oh, out of the 100 irrigation quotes I won this month or whatever, 4 of them are like vastly screwed up. Like that took way too long and we lost money on those jobs. Well, there's 10 on the other side that you just killed it because they only had like 2 zones or something.
Right.
And so it averages out. When you're a smaller company, a much smaller company, I guess you have the luxury of a little more time too. Maybe you can drive over there, you can talk to them, that kind of thing. But the way to really do it is just to get fast at it. Actually, 5 for 50 had an awesome podcast on that.
Oh, really?
Potoshnik. Not specifically on like that speed to lead kind of stuff today, but check out that podcast. If you entertain the audience for a second, I'll pull up a link. We don't have a Jamie on staff yet.
You're gonna put me on the spot here. I'll tell a fun story about Brandon. So this is a story that Brandon would not want me to share on air, and I'm gonna get really detailed. I'm just kidding. I actually don't have a story. I was trying to think of something as quickly as I could to make you nervous, but couldn't come up
What
with
is
anything.
it here?
It's 5 for 50 on YouTube, right? Are you?
Yeah.
actually
I was just
look
trying to
for-
find the episode.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 5 for 50. Like it's like the number 5 for the word 50. We'll just have to link it in the show notes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh, I think it's this one called the thumbnail Stop Selling Services. It's called Your Customers Don't Want What You're Selling. The concept is like pretty interesting. Like if like someone has to winterize their irrigation system, they have to buy that thing. It's a thing on their to-do list, and it's like, shit, I got to do that this week. It's not like and this is like I'm just totally stealing the topic of what he's talking about. It's like it's not they're going to buy a new bike or a vacation or like something exciting that they just love researching and they can't wait to spend the money on it and buy the thing. It's like irrigation winterization. It's lawn care. It's like people don't want to spend money on this shit. Just help them. The concept is basically like help them get their to-do done as fast as possible. And, and there's a bunch of other great tips in that episode, but
Yeah.
that's all I have to say about it, basically. Super
No,
good.
I love that. I love that. We built our whole branding around that. Take back your time. Like, let us take shit off your to-do list, essentially. That's not how we word it in the branding. Maybe we'll change it to that.
That's
Let us
how I
take shit
read it,
off your list. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to do a speed run?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. You want to answer first or ask first?
Let me answer first.
All right. Okay, speed round. Brandon, what is the best resource or content on this topic?
So a guy named George Ivari, sorry, George, if you watch this and I pronounce your name wrong. He had a video I watched years ago. It was an Element video on YouTube about his company, Oriole Landscaping in Ontario. Mm-hmm. And probably one of the best landscape construction businesses out there, as far as the work they produce, but really about like 5S and being super, super lean and all of that stuff. And the video is focused on estimating with Element, but all the production rates and everything still apply. His company is focused on construction. So construction guys, it's like a must watch. And that's what I would say. Also, he has one of my favorite quotes. I'm going to get one of my quotes in here, whether you like it or not. George says, I think maybe in this video, or maybe it's a different, the people will change or the people will change. That's like somebody's asking him basically like, but all of my crew or my supervisors, account managers, they will never adapt to this new way of doing things, this new way of estimating or whatever it is. And he says, well, the people will have to change or the people will change or something. People will change or they'll have to change. Yeah. It's kind of funny. So
that's you shared that quote with me and I've used it for many years now.
Yeah.
I like always come back to that.
I don't know if it's originally from him, but I credit him with it.
That's great. What's the best advice you've received or the biggest win you've had?
Figuring out that it's service-based for production rates. When I started trying to figure out a production rate, I had no data. I was very small, running it out of my garage. And I was going into winter, but it was not winter yet. It was still fall. There's no snow. And I literally went out to my sidewalk. Like my neighbors must have thought I was friggin' nuts. And I fake shoveled my sidewalk with a timer on my phone. So I was like with a shovel like this across my sidewalk, like down it for how long it would take me. And I timed that. I was like, well, that's my rate.
Honey, come here. He's at it again.
Again. But I was trying to do it, and that's doing it on the equipment, the shovel, literally the shovel. So I tried to measure that. I measured myself cutting my own grass and trimming and all this stuff. And ultimately, when I finally figured out that I should do it based on the service, it made the difference.
Nice. What's the biggest blunder you've made or seen others make?
Estimating by guessing for way too long.
Yeah.
All that does is make you, as if you're the owner or the person who at some point, you're going to have to hand off sales and estimating and trust other people to just come up with numbers for you. And it's like, I think for most owners, it's one of the last things they ever hand off. If you're not doing it this way with production rates and you're just guessing, you're never going to get there. You're going to have 3 account managers or whatever that estimate a property, and they're going to all have 20% price differences or something on them. You have to make it a science. And I think just seeing some larger companies out there that you and I both know, just do it by that property is kind of like that property, and we charge them it's like $8,000 a month, big properties.
Yeah.
Let's go with 7,500. It's like, what?
Right.
Yeah. Or estimating based on just budget. That's just a bonus thing. It's amazing, great information if the customer tells you, a condo board, somebody that has a fixed budget says, okay, our budget's $70,000 a year. And then you're like, cool, my bid's 65. It's like, well, you didn't like measure. You don't even know if that makes you money, right?
Right.
It's such a silly thing that people think if they get the budget, they you'll probably win the job. But then, yeah, another favorite quote of mine is, it's my uncle Gord taught me this one. It's much better to lose a job that you wanted than to win a job and then find out you don't want it for basically what you bid on it for. So, yeah, it's just about knowing your numbers. How's that for speed?
We might have referenced this before, but that movie War Dogs, when they give the estimate and they immediately accept the estimate, the bid. They're like,
yeah, John. I love that movie.
It's a good movie. All right. That was all the questions. That was it.
Yeah. Okay, you're up. Slowest speed round yet. What is the best resource or content on this topic for you?
The National Association for Landscape Professionals has some production rate sheets that you can just download and start from. The one thing I would caution on that is like, it's a starting point. Like, it's a good thing to kind of match up. Like, it's good to like compare,
like a gut check kind of.
Yeah, or compare your production rates. Like, it's best if you have production rates and then you can compare it to theirs to say, like, do we kind of meet industry benchmarks? That's a good use of that. I wouldn't just adopt their production rates for your services because all the reasons we talked about earlier.
Yeah. When you're starting out, if you're the kind of guy that is just guessing prices and you have some estimates coming up, do it that way. And then like write that number down first. Like if you're like, okay, this is 20 grand a season, then estimate with your production rates just to see where they come to.
Right.
Yeah. Because if you do it the other way, it's like going to screw up your head. You're not going to, the other thing tells you it should be 22 grand.
Right.
You see what I'm getting at. Okay. What's the best advice you've received or the biggest win, you've had?
I feel like this is just a different way of saying yours, but match your production rates to your clock in tasks. So basically do it by service.
And what's the biggest blunder or a mistake that you've seen other people make?
This is a mistake I made. But so we house all of our production rates in a spreadsheet that is like our pricing calculator, right? So we've got like this, fairly intricate system where we enter all the measurements from, like, first we send the site to, like, through our measurement software. We pull all those measurements out, enter them into our CRM. Those measurements get spit into a pricing calculator. The production rates live in the pricing calculator. It puts all the pricing together, spits it back into the CRM, and then I can send the proposal off, right? Yeah. I like really screwed up our production rates. Like, I think I forgot like 2 digits. Like, it was supposed to be like 15,000 square feet per man hour, and I put like 150 square feet per man hour. Like, I just screwed up. It was a typo in our calculator. But because we had this process where it's like you kind of just set the production rates once, or not once, like you regularly update them with feedback that you're getting from the field. But anyways, you set it and then you build all these proposals. I sent out, like, not only like priced them wrong with the wrong production rate, didn't catch it, and actually sent out multiple proposals that were like, I don't know how I missed it in my sanity check, but
You're
like,
in a rush.
There's a big difference from like 150 square feet an hour to like 15,000 square feet an hour. So like a service that, their total contract price maybe should have been like, I don't know, say 20,000, and it was showing up as like 200,000
right.
their contract. And I sent out probably like 4 or 5 proposals before someone came back to me and said like, hey, like, this has to be an error, right? Like, oh shit. And it was,
what a good
production rate.
a good check and balance for that is just take your final price and just check like revenue per man hour. Like, you can take your final price, divide it by the total hours on the estimate, and it's like, if it comes out to like $400 an hour or $4 an hour, something's wrong. Or by square foot, because it's like, what is your price per square foot? you'll probably always be within a tight range.
Well, the sad part is like my production calculator actually, like when I'm using it, there's like an area for me to see the like estimated man hours per service. Like there's no excuse for me to have not caught it. Like it shows me basically everything that I would have needed to know. But
I see.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Maybe someday we'll do one where I can like share the production calculator and we can dive into that. I think I might have shown it on one of our previous episodes.
Nice.
I'm almost hesitant to show it on this one just simply because like I would show the production rates one and everyone would just take those production rates as their own and then it would screw them up completely.
You're gonna ruin the whole industry.
Yeah,
that would be like bad, but in some way, imagine the impact our podcast has had for better orders.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we can probably share a few things. If there's anything in there that you guys were just wishing we would share, like a name of a technology. If we don't want to push it for some reason, we can DM it to you. But feel free to comment and ask which ones we're using or some more details on our process. Again, I'm more like condos. Jason does condos too, but if you have residential specific stuff, he's your guy for that. Yeah. I think that's
awesome.
Pretty much it.
Awesome. What, how, I feel stupid even asking you to rate your beer because it's like the 6th time you've drank that beer on this thing, but
I know. I can't remember. I should be consistent, right?
I'm going to put together a little compilation of you rating the same beer 6 different times and see how much it varied.
Great. Yeah, the Crispy Tall Boys. I give this I'm gonna give it a 8.25 out of 10.
All right. Nice.
Yeah. A 48 out of 60.
Okay. Good. I'm going to, this is again, the Nightmare on Brett from Crooked Stave. Is it Crooked Stave or Crooked Stave? Stave sounds fancier and more expensive, but I think it's Crooked Stave. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. It's a great beer. If you like sours, this is a really good one. Aged in whiskey barrels, as I mentioned. Super tasty. Got a little bit of bite to it. It is very sour though, so if you don't like sours, I would not try this one.
Cool. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be in Denver like June, July. I don't know, I have exact dates yet. But for any Colorado listeners, I would say, or anybody that wants to come to Colorado during that time, we could set up like a beer night or some kind of pub night, something like that.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a live recording from one of the beer gardens, like an actual beer garden, not your garage in my office.
I didn't get the pun until now.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Awesome. Cool. Well, one last cheers.
Cheers
to you and everyone watching. Thanks very much for tuning in. As Brandon said, drop us a line in the comments, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Beer Garden. Cheers. Oh, I said one more cheers, but there's another cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to The Beer Garden. Please find us on YouTube at The Beer Garden Podcast and subscribe, like, and enable notifications.